baby needs to cook a little bit longer. Like, no, really had no clue. I totally planned this.
The rose in a garden, and it shows if I'm honest.
Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. If you are new here, click the subscribe button. Also, if you are new here, hi, hello, my name is Kayla, and today I'm going to be doing a video all about my preterm labor. I went into preterm labor at 35 weeks. I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's not preterm, and I'm going to put it on the screen right here. ACOG in the US, I live in the US, says that 37 weeks is early term and 39 weeks is full term, and then obviously 40 weeks is your due date. So, and then anything past that is late term. I went into labor at 35 weeks and it was a very stressful time. It's been almost a year since the entire episode happened. The 3 weeks of hell, I like to call it. I didn't give birth until 37 weeks and 6 days, which, like, luckily I was able to keep my baby in. But anyway, so here is that story. So at 34 weeks and 6 days, my husband and I did the deed. And then about an hour later, actually, like 20 minutes after, I actually started eating some McDonald's. He had got me some McDonald's, and that was like my craving during my pregnancy. It was definitely my craving. But I started eating McDonald's. I was starting to get really full. So I started eating some McDonald's, and about an hour after, so this was maybe like 20 minutes after I finished eating, I started having contractions. And at first I thought that they were Braxton Hicks because they were very light. This is my third baby, and I know like what real contractions feel like, and they were just like very light at first. They were really crampy, but my husband was like, these seem to be a lot closer than you think they are, so you should probably time them. So I pulled out the little contraction timer that I had on my phone, and I will actually put the app right here. I get asked all the time what app I use. This is the app that I've used with all of my labors, and it is amazing. It tells you when to go into the hospital. It tells you like if your contractions are regular enough, all of that kind of stuff. I start timing my contractions. They're about five or so minutes apart, and I start panicking, and I'm like, okay, I need to try and get these to slow down. I need to get them to go away. So I laid on my side, I relaxed, I drank some water, I sat in a bath, like all the things that you can possibly do to stop labor, I did. And I know that it wasn't dehydration, and it actually was confirmed with my doctor, thank God. A lot of people are like, oh, maybe you're just dehydrated, and I'm like, no, that's not what this is. So I did all of the things, and about, I want to say 11 o'clock, I woke my husband up because he had to go to work early in the morning, so he fell asleep. I want to say it was like around 11:30. I woke him up, and I was like, I think we gotta go. I was 35 weeks at midnight. So I got to the hospital, and they checked me in, and they were like, okay, they asked me all of the like questions, like how far along are you? Is this your third baby? And once they realized that it was my third baby, things started to speed up. I hate this, honestly, because it makes me wonder if this was a first time mom, like how would they have treated me differently if I was a first time mom? Like, would they have taken me seriously? Like, I know that in consecutive pregnancies, things progress a lot faster, and so I know that that's why they picked it up, but like, when someone is in labor, you should just believe them. So I get in, my contractions are about 1 to 2 minutes apart. They immediately check me and I'm 3 centimeters dilated at 35 weeks, which like that is actually kind of normal for me. With my son, my second baby, I actually I had like prodromal labor, but his wasn't as bad as this. Like with him, my contractions were like 10 minutes apart. They weren't like extremely painful. There was only one time where I almost had to go to the hospital, and that was at 34 weeks. I had four weeks of labor with him, but his wasn't as terrible, and I never went into the hospital, not even one time. And this time I went in 3 separate times. I will get into those stories in a minute. But yeah, like it was just a lot, and it was a lot to process in the moment. So while my nurse was checking me in and everything, and while we figured out like how dilated I was, I asked her, and I was like, since I am 35 weeks, like, is there gonna be NICU time for my baby? I'll never forget this. This is actually really, really hard to hear. At my hospital, it is mandatory at least 12 hours of NICU time at 35 weeks. So in that moment, I was processing that. Like, if I have a baby today, my baby is going to the NICU. And I had to be okay with that. And by the end of that laboring session, I actually made peace with it. Like I was grateful that my baby was still inside, but like at the same time, I made peace with the fact if I have baby early, I'm okay. And all that matters is that my baby is healthy and safe and here, and that's it. So that was actually really, really hard to hear, because this is actually my first baby that, what is going on? This is my first baby that I had a birth plan with, kind of. I wanted to go natural. I wanted to labor in the tub for most of my labor. I wanted delayed cord clamping, which my hospital just automatically does. I also wanted skin to skin, full on skin to skin. My first baby, I got full on skin to skin, but my second baby, they put a blanket down and then the baby was on the blanket on my chest. And so I didn't want that to happen again. Like, I wanted full on skin to skin. And that was kind of like my birth plan, not like anything crazy, but you know, like there were just preferences that I had, and I wanted to make my birth team know that I had these preferences. With my second baby, when I said that the blanket was on my chest, I tried laying him on my chest. I literally tried. I like pulled my bra down, I pulled my thing off, like all of the things to try and get him like on my skin, because it's actually very, very, very necessary. And they kept putting blankets over my chest, and like it was just a big mess. I'll put a clip in right here.
He's like, what just happened? Oh, baby.
Oh man, so nice in there. It was.
But anyway, so yeah, that is what my birth plan was. And this is really the first baby that I had like a full-on birth plan with. My other two babies, I had an epidural, didn't really have any preferences. I was like, just get my baby here and safe. But this baby, I was like, I want that perfect birth. And actually really didn't get that. I did get immediate skin to skin, and I will forever cherish that. She wasn't taken from me for about 45 minutes. And I love that. But anyway, ADHD, I am completely jumping ahead in the story. But so yeah, when she said that we would have mandatory NICU, I was actually really, really sad. And I wasn't sad in the way that like you would think. It was just kind of like saying goodbye to my birth plan that I had planned. You know, like obviously this whole preterm labor was not planned. And a lot of people are like, oh, baby needs to stay in. I got a lot of comments like that. Oh, baby needs to cook a little bit longer. Like, no, really had no clue. I totally planned this. No, you can't plan preterm labor like that. Like you just can't. My body just had a mind of its own. And I honestly think that because my stomach was so full and it was like pressing against my uterus, it was just kind of like making it really aggravated and making me go into preterm labor. I had to stay on the monitor for about an hour so that they could get a really good strip of heart rate on my baby and that they could see my contractions and all of that kind of stuff. So I stayed on the monitors for an hour in the bed, which really freaking sucks. Luckily this time they were able to get me a, what is it called? Wireless monitors. And they were able to like put wireless monitors on me. So I was able to walk around after this whole ordeal happened. They do kind of suck in a way because you can't like really move around a lot, move in the way that you want. Like there was like a squatting position that I couldn't be in because it would just cause the monitors to go haywire and they weren't on the baby. And like, it was just a really big ordeal and kind of freaking sucked, honestly. But yeah, I had the monitors on me. And then about after an hour, I got out and I got into the bathtub. This is where I wanted to actually spend most of my labor at. And this time, you know, when you're in real labor, the water of the bathtub will not slow down your contractions. And that's how I knew that I was in actual labor, is because I got into the bath. It was so nice, so nice. I got into the bath and my contractions sped up. I think it's because like my body actually fully relaxed because I was in the bath. But yeah, I was in the bath and it just felt so good. I was in the bath for about an hour and my nurse had come in. She came into the bathroom and she was like, hey, I want to check you. So I get out and everything and she checks me and I'm 4 centimeters dilated. So I've dilated from 3 to 4. And that is when I knew this is it. Like, this is it. I made my I'm in labor video while actually in labor. I actually edited that video, uploaded it, edited the thumbnail in between contractions just so I could have a I'm in labor video, and I'm going to put that in right here. Guys, I'm gonna do this in one take, but I am uploading to let you guys know that I am in labor. Go follow me on Instagram. That will be where you guys will see the first of the baby and everything like that. I also wanted to say that we are not announcing the gender until all of our friends and family know. So that will probably be in whenever. I'm only 35 weeks, so there will be NICU time. So it will be when the baby is actually home. So just be patient and yeah, just letting you guys know. It took me about 2 hours to actually fully edit the thumbnail, and the thumbnail was not great. You can tell that I was in labor while editing it. And it was just, it's kind of a funny story to look at. Like, you're editing a thumbnail for YouTube while you were in labor. What? Like, what? At this point, I think it was about, I am so fuzzy on the timeline. I think it was about 3 o'clock now. So, at this time, I had to make a decision whether I wanted to speed up my labor or stop it. And the contractions were just coming one after the other every 1 to 2 minutes still. And at this point, I decided I am going to try and get these contractions going, trying to keep my labor going, trying to make myself more comfortable, swaying, getting on the ball. So I got on the ball, and this was a really nice part of my labor, is because like I was able to be on a ball, and movement is key when you're going for a natural delivery. I believe it was at this time my phone died, and then everything else just kind of went to shit. My doctor had decided to give me a pill to stop the contractions after I was 4 centimeters. I believe I was 4 centimeters. I don't remember if I was 5 centimeters at that point, but she decided to give me a pill to stop the contractions. And actually the stuff that they usually give for preterm labor, I don't remember what it's called, was actually in a shortage at the time. So they had to give me a different type of pill to stop the contractions, and it didn't work. It didn't work. My contractions were still coming every 1 to 2 minutes. So at this time, my husband had decided, we had packed up our kids, and I thought that they were just gonna stop my contractions, give me a pill, my contractions would stop, and we would be home within a few hours. That was not the case. We had packed up our kids, not even thinking about it, and we took them to my in-laws, and she tucked them into bed, and when they woke up, she was like, I don't have anything for them, like no diapers, nothing. So my husband, our hospital is an hour from her house, and my husband had to drive all the way there, get all of the stuff for them, and drive all the way back. And he wasn't back until 8 o'clock in the morning. And between the time of him leaving to him coming back, I was checked once again, and I was 5 centimeters dilated. So I had dilated from 3 centimeters to 5 centimeters within just a few hours. So I knew that this was real labor. Like, this isn't something that you can just like fake. Fake labor is not going to change your cervix. Real labor is going to change your cervix. And so that's when I knew that it was real labor. So he got back around 8 o'clock. I had kind of like stopped trying to get my contractions going because it just wasn't doing much. And so around 8 o'clock he came back, and I was able to plug my phone in. I hadn't had my phone for hours. And it was actually kind of really stressful because with him being gone and not knowing how our kids are, like I wanted an update on our kids, and I wasn't able to get that update because my phone was dead. So he got back around like 8:30 or so in the morning. My contractions were still 1 to 2 minutes apart. And I believe at this point, they decided to give me a steroid shot for the baby's lungs. And you have 2 doses of the steroid shots. The first dose is, the first dose and the second dose are within 24 hours of each other. I'm still having contractions at this point, and about 10 o'clock in the morning, so I had been having contractions for, I had been having contractions for over 12 hours. It was like 10:30, maybe even 11, when my contractions just kind of stalled out. They started like getting further and further and further apart unless you would touch my stomach. My uterus was so irritated that even just like touching my stomach would cause a contraction. And that was like really hard. Nurse checks me at about 10:30, and I am still 5 centimeters dilated. So I haven't dilated anymore from about 5, 6 o'clock or so. Then it was just kind of like fizzling out at that point. So we were discharged around 1:00 p.m. and my contractions were still kind of like coming every 20 minutes, honestly. Like it was nothing. And it was really only because my uterus was so irritated. I had a very irritable uterus and it was very, very frustrating. So the next day we woke up around like 6 o'clock, I think it was 6 o'clock, to get to the hospital to do my second steroid shot. They did my second steroid shot and I had actually lost my mucus plug the day that we got home from the hospital. So it was like a few hours after we got home from the hospital. And then that next day I went in for my steroid shot. I lost my mucus plug. I told them, I was like, I'm spotting and I lost my mucus plug, like all of these things. And they were like, oh, so labor is very near and it's not really stopping. And I was like, no, it's definitely not stopping. So they gave me a second steroid shot. They gave this one in my butt. That was painful. The first one they gave in my thigh and it wasn't really painful. Like I didn't feel it at all. It didn't sting afterwards. It didn't hurt afterwards. This one hurt. This one hurt. They gave it in my butt and it was sore for a few days. It was so extremely painful. Even more than the DTaP shot, the Tdap shot, whatever that is, the tetanus shot. And it's even more than that. Oh my goodness, that hurt so badly. So actually that day my back started burning. I didn't think anything of it until I got a DM on Instagram because I had talked about how my back was like on fire, and they were like, hey, I'm just letting you be aware that could be back labor. I've never had back labor in any of my 3 pregnancies, so this was the first time I've ever felt anything like that. And I was like, so I actually started timing the contractions on my contraction timer, and what would you know, they were about 5 minutes apart. Like it was like full on burning, but there was like waves, like a contraction, and it was kind of frustrating because I'm like, seriously, I'm having back labor. I had back labor that entire day. So I had contractions for another 12 hours and had no clue. I didn't know until about 8 o'clock that night, and I woke up with that pain. So very, very frustrating. The next day, I woke up with belly contractions. This was so frustrating because I'm like, I don't want to go back to the hospital. So I was texting my husband this entire day, and I was like, I'm having contractions again. I woke up and I was like, I'm having contractions again. And he was like, take another pill. They gave me like a little prescription of the stuff that stops your labor. So I took another pill. I waited an hour and I was like, it's not doing anything. Like these contractions are coming about every 3 minutes. And so I texted my husband and I was like, can you get home? Like, can you get home? My 2 kids were awake and they were asking for snacks. They were just being kids. And I was like having contractions, sitting on my birthing ball, and I was like, oh my goodness, like this is hard. I had never gone into labor with my kids awake. I had never gone into labor with my kids awake. So all while this is going on, I'm having contractions. My kids are wanting snacks, just being kids. They don't really understand what is going on. I'm sitting on my birthing ball. I'm sitting in the kitchen. I've been having contractions. I think I woke up at about 8 o'clock and I had contractions. I woke up from my contractions. That might have actually been 7 o'clock. I think it was 7 o'clock. So I woke up from the contractions and I started timing them immediately. They were 3 minutes apart. They weren't getting closer together, but they were getting stronger. So around 1 o'clock, I think I took that pill at around 11, and around 1 o'clock, my husband gets home and we immediately head to the hospital. We take our kids to their designated area, their designated house, their designated babysitter, and we immediately head to the hospital. And let me tell you, I was so glad he was here and we were going, because my contractions in the car got astronomically painful. I don't even know, like even more painful than my 12-hour labor that I had just endured 2 days before. It was so extremely frustrating, and my contractions were still coming. There was a point in the car where I had actually wondered if this was real. Like, I didn't want to be sent home again. Like, I didn't want to go in and then be like, no, you're not in labor. Even though I know that that's what I needed to do, I just like was second guessing myself. And I think us as women especially, we second guess ourselves, and we second guess like all of our decisions that we're making for our health, and especially when we're pregnant. Like, I don't want to be bothering these nurses, even though that's literally their job. They're at their job for a reason, and they would rather me come in and be sent home with my baby still in my belly than things go south. So I told myself that over and over and over again, like, these doctors and these nurses are here for a reason. They're here to help you, and I would rather go in, have them send me home, than not go in and have something go horribly wrong. And I feel like a lot of us need to hear that about a lot of things, and not just like pregnancy and labor and birth. So there's your reminder. So I went into the hospital. We got there around 3 o'clock. And they immediately hooked me up to the monitors. My contractions were 3. Actually, I want to say that they were about 1 to 2 minutes apart again. There were like mini contractions that I wasn't feeling in the moment. And my nurse is like, can you feel that? Like, you're having a contraction right now. And I was like, no, I can't feel that. So they checked me, and I was 5.5 centimeters dilated. So I had dilated just a little bit more, which was really frustrating. Like, come on, like, just dilate to a 6. At this point, I was just so extremely exhausted. I had had 3 days of consistent contractions. Obviously the back labor that I didn't really know that I had. And then obviously going into the hospital and being sent home. And I was very frustrated. So I got into the bath again, and actually the first time, I didn't even tell you guys this, I didn't bring anything for the baby. I was so convinced that they were going to give me a pill and send me home. Like, that was what I thought that they were going to do. They didn't. So we had nothing for the baby. I didn't have any of my things for like labor. I didn't have a bra to labor in. I didn't have anything. I had the clothes that I had, the hospital gown, and my hair tie. That's what I had. And my phone, which obviously died the first time. So the second time we got home from the hospital, the first time, I made sure that all of my bags were packed and in the car, just in case this happened again. And I'm so glad, because 2 days later, I obviously went to labor. And so I got into the bath again, got out of the bath 20 minutes later, and I got onto the birthing ball to try and get the contractions going and try and get them even more closer together, and it just wasn't working. So they had checked me about 2 hours later, and I was still 5.5 centimeters dilated. So I hadn't dilated anymore, which to me in that moment was very frustrating. Like, if I just hit a 6, I would be automatically admitted and they would not send me home. And it was so extremely frustrating, because I'm just like, my cervix has a 0.5 centimeter left. 0.5 centimeter. You're having all of these contractions. You're not dehydrated. You're good on all of that kind of stuff. and like, what is going on? It was just like very, very frustrating. So around, I want to say it was around 8 o'clock that night. So I had another 12 hours of contractions. They had sent me home. I was still kind of having contractions every like 10-ish, 15-ish minutes. But they weren't anything, and there was no cervical dilation. And I was just like, I just want to go home. Like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And I started crying, and I was just like really frustrated. Like, why? I wanted to know why my body failed me. And I know like it kept my baby in, but in that moment, it was very, very hard to be logical, I guess. Like, I was exhausted. Over 3 days of contractions, and I was just exhausted. I wanted it to end. I just wanted it to be over. Like, I wanted my baby to be in my arms, and I wanted the entire labor to just end. And this time around, I had started questioning whether I really wanted to go natural or not. My husband's like, I will support you, whatever you want to do. But unfortunately, I had someone in my life tell me, you can't do it. And so I said, bet. So I have birth trauma anyway. So yeah, we were sent home around 8 o'clock. We got our kids, we got home, and my contractions were kind of done. And then about 3 or 4 days later, I can't really remember exactly how long it was. I was awake and I started having contractions around 11 o'clock, maybe it was even midnight. I started having contractions again, and I came out here and I sat on my yoga ball while everyone in the house was asleep. They were dead asleep. And I stayed out here timing contractions for 4 hours. And I didn't go to the hospital. They were about 3 minutes apart, I think. I didn't go to the hospital because I knew that they would just end. And I was right. Like, and this happened 3 times. 3 separate times, where I would have contractions for about 4 hours at a time, and they would be really, really, really regular. And even at 5.5 centimeters, like, I didn't want to go into the hospital just because, like, I didn't want to be turned away again. Like, I didn't want to be discharged once again. I was just so exhausted. And then, I think it was about 2 days after my last, like, 4-hour contraction, I went into labor again at 36 weeks and 6 days. So I was actually 36 weeks and 5 days at the time that I actually went into labor. So I wasn't even considered term yet. I start having really bad contractions. Nothing will make them go away. And so I'm like, I am so close to 37 weeks. And actually, what put me into labor, don't tell my nurses this, don't tell my doctor this, I did the deed. I was actually on pelvic rest and I was on bed rest, so no deed for 3 weeks. And I was like, I'm so close to 37 weeks, like, I want some D. So yeah, so we did the D. We did the D. We did the deed that night, and I went into labor, of course, and we got to the hospital around midnight. I was 36 weeks and 6 days now. So extremely frustrating. I started having contractions, and I was like, let's go back into the hospital. Hopefully we have our baby tonight. And like, I was so convinced we would have our baby this night that, like, I made a full birth vlog. except for the birth part. I was so extremely convinced that I would have the baby that night. You need to have a baby?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Me and Brayden were talking about it in the car. Rest in peace. Brayden's grandma had actually had we knew that she wasn't gonna be around very much longer, and so we started talking right when we pulled into the hospital. Like, how great would it be for her to meet the baby before she passes away? Luckily, she held on just a little bit longer and did get to meet our baby the day after we gave birth. I miss you. Fuck. I'm back. Anyway, we pulled into the hospital and we were talking like about how great it would be for his grandma to meet the baby. And we both just started like tearing up because we knew it wouldn't be very long. Anyway, enough on that. So we got up to labor and delivery, and the nurse that I had previously, she was there again, and she was like, "Hey, I remember you." And I was like, "Yeah." She was amazing. I loved this nurse so much. She was just so kind and so like genuine, and just so freaking sweet. And love her. Like, I love all my nurses, especially the one that actually helped me deliver my baby. But this one especially, she was just like a rock star. She was just so attentive and like so kind and just so nice. I swear, labor and delivery nurses are a whole different breed. Like, amazing people. So anyway, we got up, she checks me, and I'm still 5.5 centimeters dilated. And it was just like, oh, really? Like, I'm having these contractions back to back to back to back to back, and no cervical change. Like, what is going on? And so we stay for about an hour at the hospital, and my contractions space out. Like, why couldn't you have spaced out while we were at home, or even on the car ride to the hospital? Like, why did you have to just stop right after we got to the hospital? So I called my nurse in and I was like, "Can you check me again?" She checks me again and she was like, "You're still 5.5 centimeters dilated." And that is when I asked to be discharged. I was still having contractions every like 10-ish minutes, but nothing was happening. And so I'm like, I just don't want this to keep happening. Like, I'm done. I'm tired. I don't want to be here. And at that moment, I prayed to God, which I don't really do often, that you either put me into labor fully and I have my baby, or you stop these contractions. And I didn't have contractions for another week until I gave birth. So yeah, that is my preterm labor story. It's very, very, very frustrating, and still to this day, like, it makes me really emotional. Like, I wish I could go back a year ago and give myself a hug. Like, I needed a hug. I needed to be told, like, I promise this wait is worth it. I promise this wait is worth it. And I know that you're exhausted. Like, I was so exhausted. Like, it was the type of exhaustion that wouldn't be fixed with sleep. Like, I was getting some sleep, definitely not great sleep. I actually get more sleep with a newborn than I do in my 3rd trimester of pregnancy. So yeah, anyway, that is kind of the entire preterm labor story. I actually have my labor and delivery story up right now. I will have it linked below as well. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you in my next one. Bye, guys.